are 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football.
Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Nearly 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 17th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 23 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Brian Eikenberry and Andy Hall.
Hello, friends. Welcome to 515 Fantasy Football. It is Week 10. I am your host, Andy Hall, alongside my good friend, Brian Eikenberry. Brian, we are bringing our A game again this week.
Yeah, that's no joke. Plus 37 on our grading system again, so we're doing some great numbers. We're doing some great things. Our matchup system is working pretty great. We've got great feedback from listeners out there and explaining how we've made the right calls for them and helped them win them some matchups. It's just looking really good.
You can find us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter at 515 Fantasy Foot or at 515 Fantasy. Getting ahead of myself there, as the email address is also available, 515fantasy at gmail.com. Yes, Week 9 was a good one for us. We look forward to Week 10 and getting closer, Brian, to the fantasy playoffs right around the corner. Hard to believe.
Yeah, it's coming up, and you need to prepare. You need to be aware of who's on your roster, who's not on your roster, and who they're playing in the next 3 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, trade deadlines are coming up too, so that's an important thing to take a look at as well, up and down your roster as you look for guys with some juicy matchups in those all-important playoff weeks. If you spot somebody, maybe try to get them on your roster for the home stretch and that playoff run. We, of course, wish you the best of luck. Got a lot going on this hour, including all the matchups. Of course, we got the bargain bin to wrap up the show. 3 players that many of you can find on your waiver wire. Plug right in and get some great fantasy production from. We'll also do our pop quiz as well. But we begin, as we always do, with headlines. And Brian, Andrew Luck has been diagnosed with a lacerated kidney and will miss 2 to 6 weeks. It's sounding like it's going to be more the latter than the former, actually. So he could miss a month, maybe more.
Yeah, I don't think owners are too frustrated. This way, you can't blame his performance on a bad score or throwing some extra turnovers. But, looking at his season in a whole, he has been injury-riddled since week 1. Mm-hmm. It's always been something, and it's good to know that the Colts are actually reporting his injury accurately on the report.
Well, aside from a bad burrito from a local burrito joint there in Seattle, from Indianapolis, Matt Hasselbeck is looking to, take the reins here for probably the next month or so, and we'll see how that goes for him. Ben Roethlisberger hurt his foot last weekend. He's likely out this week with a bye coming Week 11. I know he says he wants to play here in Week 10, but that would be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Patriots running back Deion Lewis on season-ending IR with a torn ACL. Looks like it'll be the either James White or Brandon Bolden show. We'll see how that rolls and have a discussion about it a little later on in the show. Hint, hint. Mm-hmm. Eddie Lacy exited Sunday's game at Carolina with a groin injury. This is after the fumble that he lost. Now, he should be good to go this week, but head coach Mike McCarthy has named James Starks as the starter. So Eddie Lacy has been relegated to change of pace duty, the number 2 guy in Green Bay, for the time being. Chargers wide receiver Malcolm Floyd suffered a torn labrum. He was my bargain bin pick last week, and I couldn't be more disappointed in the timing of that injury. Looks like he could miss the remainder of 2015. Hey, it's not like Stevie Johnson lit the world on fire. That was your guy.
Had more than yours.
More than mine. True. D'Angelo Williams came out of last weekend with a foot ailment. He is near 100% for Sunday, so no worries there. Bills head coach Rex Ryan expects LaShawn McCoy at 100% for Sunday's game. I don't think it'll be exactly that. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. And LaShawn McCoy is a guy that's been nicked up quite a bit. If I were the Bills, I wouldn't feel bad about just rolling Carlos Williams out there, more often than not. Jets placed kicker Nick Folk on injured reserve, ending his season with a quad injury. It's Randy Bullock time in New York. Both Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker probable for Thursday Night Football, so no worries out of either of them. Jags wide receiver Alan Hearns sprained his left foot on a game-ending interception play last Sunday. He's questionable for Sunday, something we're keeping a very close eye on. He did not practice on Wednesday. Marquise Lee has been limited thus far this week with his hamstring injury. If Hearns can't go, Marquise Lee could step in and have an opportunity. C.J. Spiller, could he be this week's squeaky wheel? Do you have any thoughts on this, Brian? C.J. Spiller came in and said something to the effect of, yeah, I've talked to the coaches. I asked them why I'm not more involved. I guess you'll just have to ask them.
Well, it's one of them. He's got an ego kind of a deal. Spiller was supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It just never really materialized. It never really got going. It was always something in and out, in and out. That's why teams moved on. And when he was brought in, everybody kind of expected him to regain that form, especially in a pass-first offense like the Saints was going to be. And he never shined when he had the opportunities, and Mark Ingram has just blown everybody away.
Broncos corner Aqib Talib suspended for this Sunday's game for poking Colts tight end Dwayne Allen in the eye, which he did appeal but lost that appeal. So he will be suspended this week, hurting that Broncos defense even just a little bit. Browns head coach Mike Pettin says Josh McCown will be the starter if he's healthy enough to play, and it looks like he might be this week. Otherwise, as you know, it'll be Johnny Football time in Cleveland once again. Latavius Murray going through the league's concussion protocol. A 50-50 shot that he plays this Sunday. They're playing the Vikings, who have some concussion issues of their own. Quarterback Teddy Bridgewater also going through the league's concussion protocol. One last item here, Brian. The Rams agreed to a one-year deal with free agent wide receiver Wes Welker. Any thoughts on that?
Yep, it was a good thought, and I have already claimed him in one of my main leagues because it's worth a shot. I've got the roster space. Welker's there. He's probably going to be one of the better receivers. He can do it again. Why not? Just make a waiver if you can.
I've always said you're a wise young man, Brian Eikenberry.
I try.
Let's jump into the matchups. We begin with Thursday Night Football, Buffalo at the New York Jets, and start on the Buffalo side of the ball. Tyrod Taylor is your quarterback. He's a B grade for this one. The Jets rank 10th against opposing quarterbacks and are on par with a Miami secondary that held Taylor in the Bills' passing game to under 200 yards through the air and only one touchdown pass. But historically, they haven't fared well against dual-threat quarterbacks like Taylor, giving up big games to Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson in 2014. You add to that a banged-up Antonio Cromartie who might not play. Taylor's got a shot at a good fantasy day here. That's a B. Your running back is LaShawn McCoy. He's a C+. Most believe McCoy will be active and receive the majority of the backfield work on Thursday night, but he's got an uphill battle against one of the league's best defenses against the run. The Jets have only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns on the season. Carlos Williams is a C grade for me. He'll spell McCoy. His change of pace likely won't matter much against these tough Jets, but if I give a guy a shot to score a touchdown, it would be Carlos Williams, at least for me. Sammy Watkins is a B. He likely visits Revis Island in this one, but Watkins is a special kind of talent. I think he'll see enough targets to warrant starting him this week despite his ankle bothering him. Robert Woods is a C+. He should be top 3 in team targets against a Jets defense that surrenders nearly 260 yards per game to opposing pass catchers. You're banking on a touchdown if you consider him in your flex spot, but consider the fact he likely won't get Revis in coverage, and the fact that complementary non-number 1 wide receivers typically do very well against the Jets. Alan Hearns, 5 for 122 and a score. Michael Crabtree, 7 for 102 and a score. Danny Amendola, 8 for 86 and a score. Dante Moncrief, 7 for 122 and a score. Kenny, 5 for 81 and 1. For that reason, Chris Hogan is also in play here as a C-, but I like Robert Woods slightly more. Your tight end is Charles Clay. I give him a C-. He's disappeared far too often to consider him a good fantasy start, but this is just tough enough a matchup to make one think Clay will get some looks. We move over to the Jets side, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's a B+. Because Buffalo has a reputation as a top-notch run-stuffing unit, which, by the way, is fool's gold, most teams attempt to beat the Bills through the air. Fitzpatrick has great weapons. He's exceeded expectations time and time again in this offense, averaging about 2 touchdown passes per game when he plays a full game. Chris Ivory is a B. The fool's gold comment I made a bit ago. Here's the facts. The Bills rank 20th in the league against opposing running backs, allowing over 19 fantasy points per game to the position in standard scoring leagues. And they've given up 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. Decent, yes, but far from elite. Ivory should be a fine volume play here, especially considering I heard that Nick Mangold might be back in the lineup. Your receivers, Brandon Marshall's a B+. It's been an interesting season for him so far. In most games he's been active. He'll either get you big yardage or a TD, but generally not both. I see 2, maybe 3 opportunities to catch a touchdown pass in this matchup. Marshall should be good here for at least one of them. Eric Decker, also a B+, one of the most consistent fantasy performers in the league. Decker's been worth every dollar you spent on him. Jeff Cumberland's a tight end. I'm leaving him on the bench. Not worth the start there.
All right, let's do this. Lions-Packers. The Lions come off their bye week with a tough divisional opponent that is on a 2-game skid. What's that mean? Bad news for the Lions and likely another loss. Matt Stafford, he's going to get a B here because fantasy stats are all that matters on this show. The Lions will have to throw a ton to catch up and just overall play calling because the run game is horrible. So look for Stafford to be slinging that ball about 50 times. Running back Joique Bell, curious here. He is listed on the depth chart as the starter, but it doesn't change anything for me. The Lions' O-line is garbage right now, and the running game is terrible. So leave all Lions running backs on the bench, regardless of matchup. It's not worth the risk. They've proven time and time again it doesn't matter who they're playing. It's just not going to happen. Wide receiver Calvin Johnson is currently questionable, but the ankle should be good to go. He plays through a ton of injuries, and he will likely do so again. And for that, Megatron always gets an A, as always. He has 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games. Wide receiver Golden Tate, he's going to get a C+. While he does have 20% of the targets on the team, he isn't doing much with them. I think there's only 2 weeks where he has actually met his expectations for his production levels on his targets and catches. His yards after catch are terrible. He hasn't scored well at all, and it's always low point totals. Tight end Eric Ebron, he is a average play at best here. It's feast or famine with him, and especially with any Lions tight end. If he does get a TD, he will have a good point total, but since Jim Bob Cooter has taken over the play calling, it's not a good time to own a tight end in the Lions offense. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers on the Packers side of the ball looks to get his groove back and become the harvester of the Lions' sorrow. A for Aaron Rodgers. He's going to cut him up pretty bad here. He has had a rough 2 weeks on the road, and now he's back home. And it is a weak Lions defense. So Rodgers, he's probably going to be that guy who goes off for 404 touchdowns this week. Running back Eddie Lacy, as you heard, he's got that groin injury, and James Starks is now that runner. So Eddie Lacy, he's going to get that C here. The Packers are just not being tolerant with Lacy at all, whether it's the weight issues, the injury issues, the stamina issues, whatever. For that, since it is the bad Lions defense, I am giving James Starks here the B+. He has proven time and time again as old reliable coming in and always getting rewarded. Wide receiver Randall Cobb, he is getting 27% of the targets but is doing much less with those opportunities. He has been showing more flashes recently, and I expect him to do just fine this week against the Lions, B+. Wide receiver James Jones statistically is the Packers' best option at wide receiver. He has 24 receptions, 20 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, and 11 catches over 20 yards. Devontae Adams is going to get a C. Tight end Richard Rodgers, B-. I don't think there's going to be a need to rely heavily on a Packers tight end, as every other skill position on the Packers is likely going to have good yardage and scores.
Dallas at Tampa Bay on the Cowboys side. Matt Castle's a B+. Check this out. Dallas and Tampa's pass defenses have given up the exact same amount of yardage through 8 games. 1,925 passing yards. That's 7.5 yards per attempt. That's 241 yards per game. But Tampa has allowed 19 passing touchdowns. Dallas only 9. Wow. Castle has lots of weapons at his disposal. He may even surprise you with a few rushing yards on top of what he can do through the air. Darren McFadden gets a B in this one. The Bucs are a top 10 rush defense, allowing only 108 yards per game on the ground. They've allowed 5 touchdowns on the season. McFadden is the only game in town, though, so he'll get plenty of touches. Not too concerned. He'll put up decent fantasy numbers. Des Bryant is an A. Alteron Werner, once an absolute stud at the corner position, will likely be tasked with slowing Des on Sunday. Des made it clear he's near 100%, and his Week 9 performance was an encore of things to come. Cole Beasley had himself a game last week. I give him a B here. He had an incredible Sunday night. He'll continue to be a favorite target of Castle's. He is Julian Edelman light, essentially. Or what Wes Welker used to be in that Patriots offense. There you have it. Terrence Williams is a C-, barely startable. Can't be counted on, even if he usually gets at least one downfield shot, some of them in the red zone where he can succeed. He did have a score called back on a penalty in Week 9, but I can't in good conscience endorse starting him here. Tight end Jason Witten, a B-. He'll get his looks, but he's far from the touchdown scoring machine that he used to be back in the day. Over to the Bucs side, Jameis Winston's a B-. You've heard the stats. The Cowboys only give up about one passing touchdown per game. Winston will need to lean on his running backs and chip in some rushing yards of his own in order to keep this game competitive and not turn the ball over. Doug Martin, speaking of the running game, is an A. I love this matchup for the muscle hamster. Taking on the league's 31st ranked defense against opposing running backs, the Cowboys give up over 24 fantasy points per game to the position in standard scoring leagues and have allowed a total of 9 rushing touchdowns on the year. Charles Sims is a B. Pass-catching backs do especially well against Dallas. Once Martin gets his, Sims will get chances as well. Your receiver is Mike Evans, B+. He'll spend some time on the jugs machine this week, I'm sure, and bounce back with a nice game against a Dallas defense that gives up plenty of yardage, but not a ton of touchdowns. Adam Humphries is a name here. I'll give him a C, a desperation flex play, a guy that may see an uptick in opportunities with all the wide receiver injuries that Tampa Bay has been dealing with this season. Austin Seferian-Jenkins still haven't gotten definitive word that he will be playing this week. But if he does play, I'll throw a B grade at him after the start he had to this season. Why not throw Austin Seferian-Jenkins out there?
Absolutely. I completely agree. Just hope to get that guy back on the field. Panthers-Titans, Cam looks to move to 9-0, and he has a very good shot at doing so against the Titans and should be a good day here for Cam, B+. I think he will do just fine moving the chains, and most of the action is going to come on his legs or quick passes to Greg Olsen. Tennessee has a third-best pass defense, which will hurt Cam's already minimal passing game as is. Running back Jonathan Stewart could have a decent game here, as I expect a short game to be the way to go to a win. However, Jay Stu, he is still just that and will earn himself only a B today. Wide receiver Ted Ginn Jr., C. Corey Brown, C, for obvious reasons, as I mentioned above. It will not be a passing game, so neither should have good yardage, and you shouldn't be counting on a touchdown from either of them. If you do want to look for a receiving touchdown, please turn your attention to one tight end, Greg Olsen. He has 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's just money. He commands that respect. He has that great relationship between him and Cam, so an A for Mr. Olsen. Quarterback Marcus Mariota, he continues to have some impressive games, especially when you are a rookie and you throw for 371 yards and 4 touchdowns last week. However, I do not expect that when you are playing a Carolina defense. I will give Mariota a B-, as he has shown he can find open receivers, but has a challenge on reading defenses in disguise, especially under pressure. Carolina has 16 sacks in the last 4 games, so beware. Running back Antonio Andrews, top of the depth chart. He has 4 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns, so it's not successful running offense, but they are up against it. C+ for Andrews this week. Wide receivers of note, Harry Douglas and Justin Hunter, B- and B respectively. I think Justin Hunter is the tastier of the two, as he has the higher yards per catch. Tight end Delaney Walker, he showed us last week that he can still catch a touchdown pass if he is the third player to catch the ball. So an A for Walker, as the pressure on Mariota will be mounting quickly, so it will force those short passes, and make sure you get Delaney Walker in your lineup.
Absolutely. I had him, and I couldn't believe that miracle catch. According to Walker, he didn't even see the ball until it was in his hand. So
that's ridiculous.
No doubt. Chicago at St. Louis on the Bears side. Jay Cutler is on the bench this week. The Rams are a damn good pass defense. They've allowed the 4th fewest passing yards, have only given up 5 passing touchdowns on the season. Opposing quarterbacks are scoring less than 15 points per game against them on average. Jeremy Langford is a B. St. Louis is 11th in the league against opposing running backs, allowing less than 17 fantasy points per game to the position in standard leagues. Langford, as we witnessed on Monday, is the workhorse going forward and has the tools to get the job done. I kind of like him this week, despite what looks like a tough matchup. Alshon Jeffrey is a B-. Odds are against him scoring a touchdown, as the Rams have only allowed 2 of them all year in home games. But Jeffrey should be busy when the Bears decide to take to the air. Marquise Wilson's a C-. Not a great matchup. He'll probably be the 3rd or 4th option for Cutler. For that reason, Eddie Royal I'll leave on the bench. Martellus Bennett will get a B-. Cutler will need to throw in this game, no doubt about it. The vast majority of them will go at Jeffrey and Bennett. As far as the Rams go, Nick Foles is a C in this game. The Bears give up the same exact amount of yardage through the air as the Rams do, about 220 yards on average. But where the Rams have only allowed 5 passing touchdowns, the Bears are slightly more beatable, giving up 17 touchdowns through the air. Todd Gurley, they won't need to do it because they've got Todd Gurley, right? Todd Gurley's an obvious A. The Bears have a very mediocre run-stopping defense. Gurley, he's an elite fantasy commodity. He should have another big day on Sunday. But I'm not leaving any of these receivers on the bench. Tavon Austin, a B. He's getting more involved in a wide variety of ways, which I like to see. Kenny Britt, I'll even throw a C at him. Not in love with his chances here, but if you're in a pinch, he may be worth a look in the flex spot. Jared Cook, however, I'm leaving on the bench because that's where he belongs. Brian, one more matchup until the pop quiz.
All right, Saints and Redskins. Drew Brees rolls into D.C. with his second-ranked passing offense to smash into Washington's surprisingly 9th best passing defense. I'm going to give Drew Brees here a B because of Washington's pass defense, but also their terrible run defense that's in the bottom quarter. Not for lack of effort, but I think they will play to the game and just run with running back Mark Ingram. And as a result, he is going to get the big A start of the week here. Mark Ingram, A start of the week. I'm not going to buy into that squeaky wheel thing here. Kyrie Robinson's out, so Ingram's going to get those goal line touches to kind of boost his touchdown count, hopefully. And Spiller, he's running his mouth, but that can go either way. Percy runs his mouth a lot, too. You can see where he's at. So, wide receiver Willie Snead, he's the Saints' leading receiver by yardage, but not by targets, which is a tell of his deep ball threat. B+ for Willie Snead. He has that big ability to have those long gains and potentially then breakaway touchdowns. Cooks, he's going to get the B- here. I think they're going to roll coverage to Cook's side, which are going to allow some openings to Snead. Colton and Coleman aren't worth in my time anymore, and as they have zero consistency. Tight end Benjamin Watson, he's getting 13.9% of the targets in New Orleans, and he's done very well with his workload, so I'm going to give a B for Watson. On to the Redskins. This one's going to be quick, I promise. Quarterback Kirk Cousins, he has all of his weapons back, so let's give him a little glimmer of hope here. I'm going to give him a B. Fun stat of the week here. It's kind of contradictory to what I just said. Kirk Cousins has played in 8 games. 7 games, he only has 1 touchdown. So that's 7 touchdowns in 8 of his games. That's terrible. But he does have 1 game that has 3 touchdowns, so you kind of figure that one out. It's all about the weapons, and it's the Saints. So you've got the bad Saints defense. You've got all of Kirk Cousins' weapons back. I think he's in for a good one. Running backs on the Redskins is the conundrum. My answer, skip every single one of them. Just when you think it's going to go one way, it immediately goes the other with these guys. No consistency or stats, really. So check out this statistic. All of Washington's running backs have 710 yards combined. Adrian Peterson and Devonta Freeman have that beat by themselves. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, B-, Pierre Garçon, B+. I think Garçon is your play here. He's going to catch a few. He's probably going to get the TD. Nothing large, and nothing you can count on. But Deshaun Jackson, speedy slot guy, you never know what's going to happen there. Tight end Jordan Reed, B+. He is your other TD chance. He has the most on the team and hauls in 17.5% of those targets.
Brian, are you ready for the pop quiz?
Let's do it, my man.
3 tough questions guaranteed to melt Brian's brain. All right.
Perfect.
Question number 1. Is the Colts' 40-year-old quarterback Matt Hasselbeck worth an ad with news that Andrew Luck may miss 2 to 6 weeks with a lacerated kidney?
I'm going to say yes. And if you look back at his games where they simplified the playbook, he did all right for himself. And if you're given the right defense you're playing, I don't know what their next like 3 or 5 defenses are, but if you've got the room, pick him up now. If he has a big game, you can possibly trade him to somebody who has an injury or somebody who has Big Ben on a bye the next week. Hey, if you've got the waiver room, take it.
Correct answer is yes. Hasselbeck performed well in Luck's absence weeks 4 and 5, throwing for 282-1 against Jacksonville's 28th ranked defense, 213-2 against Houston's 24th ranked defense. Over the next 6 weeks, the Colts are on bye here in week 10, at Atlanta week 11, at home versus Tampa week 12, at Pittsburgh week 13, at Jacksonville week 14, and at home versus Houston week 15. Assuming Luck is out the entire 6 weeks, that schedule looks very favorable, at least to me. And I'm adding him in the place of people like Jay Cutler, Sam Bradford, and other disappointing number 2 quarterbacks. So the answer is absolutely yes. Question number 2. Should you drop Eddie Lacy at this point in redraft leagues?
In a redraft, yeah, I would. And I kind of talked about it earlier that Mike McCarthy has zero tolerance for this guy right now. And they're just not going to mess with it. They're not going to do it. They've shown and zero hesitation to bench him and make a statement, regardless of weight, injury, fumbles, whatever. You name it, they're going to yank him.
Correct answer is yes. He has scored 49 points in standard scoring leagues. He's the 42nd ranked running back.
Wow.
2015 has been a disaster of epic proportions for Lacy, who got hurt again in last week's loss at Carolina, as we mentioned. Aside from 2 matchups versus the Lions and 1 versus the Raiders, there are no plus matchups for Green Bay between now and the end of the fantasy playoffs. James Starks is the man to own if you want a piece of the Packers' backfield going forward. Number 3, which Patriots running back stands to benefit the most from the season-ending injury to Dion Lewis?
I'm just going straight up with Blunt. Look, he was brought back for a reason. He's shown that he can do it, and he's just going to do it now. I think they're going to adjust their play calling to go more pass and really force Blunt to not be somebody he's not. And that's the good thing about Belichick is he's smart. He's not going to try and make Blunt do all these big things. And he's also not going to trust somebody who hasn't done anything with the game, especially the way they're playing. I think it's Blunt's show.
Did you say Belichick's smart?
Yeah?
You know who else is smart?
Tom Brady?
Brian Eikenberry.
Woo!
Brian went 3 for 3. LeGarrette Blount is the answer here. Though he's not known as a pass catcher, the Patriots figure to be up on the majority, if not all, of their remaining opponents. And as we all know, Blount is the workhorse in those situations. James White, Brandon Bolden, whoever may split any additional work there is to be had in the New England backfield, but it's nearly impossible to say which of the two you can count on week to week. Not to mention, I don't know if you heard this, Miami recently released Jonas Gray, who has a history with the Patriots. Who knows? He could end up back on the roster. So, yes, of course, the correct answer here is LeGarrette Blount. We are heading back into the matchups, Brian, fast and furious. We begin with Miami and Philadelphia. On the Dolphins side, Ryan Tannehill is a B-. Philly has allowed 13 touchdown passes on the season, but has also intercepted 12 enemy throws. Tannehill on the road is not nearly as efficient as Tannehill at home, so I'd be surprised if Miami didn't try to win this game by controlling time of possession, which means a lot of Lamar Miller and Jay Ajayi. Speaking of Lamar Miller, he gets a B here. He's a volume play against a relatively tough Philly front seven playing in front of their home crowd. As we saw last week, Miller can still have a viable fantasy day even against the league's best run defenses because he touches the ball as much as he does, both in the running game and the passing game. The Eagles have only allowed 3 touchdowns on the ground this season, something to keep in mind. Jay Ajayi, I'm going to keep him on the bench here, but the talented rookie saw his first game action last week. He looked like a solid change of pace for when Miller needs a breather. He's definitely a guy to keep a close eye on going forward, in my opinion. The wide receivers now, Jarvis Landry, a B+. Philly is among the league's most generous defenses, allowing opposing wide receivers nearly 270 yards per game through the air and over 28 fantasy points per game to the position. Landry benefits because the Eagles have a monstrous pass rush, and Tannehill will need to get rid of the ball quick. Landry's not really known as the downfield guy. That would be Rashard Matthews, but I give him a B here. There's not a lot to dislike about this matchup for Matthews, who has proven himself to be a very solid wide receiver 3 or a low-end wide receiver 2 for most fantasy squads. Tight end Jordan Cameron, I'm going to leave on the bench. He's disappointed most owners this season due to his lack of consistent involvement in the Miami passing game and faces the league's best defense against the tight end position, so don't even bother. Over to the Eagles side, Sam Bradford, a B-. Miami is a bottom third pass defense, giving up 16 passing touchdowns on the season, only grabbing 6 interceptions. Bradford has the weapons at his disposal, particularly in the short, quick passing game, to be a worthwhile fantasy starter this week, but don't expect a ton of attempts. Miami is among the league's worst run defenses. For that reason, DeMarco Murray, I'm giving an A grade too. Facing a Dolphins defense that has been battered and bruised all season by opposing runners, they've given up the second most yards to the position, nearly 143 yards per game. They've allowed 7 rushing touchdowns. All of that is nearly as terrible as Cleveland, believe it or not. Ryan Matthews, I'll give a B to. As usual, he'll get his as well. I like his chances against Miami's 30th ranked defense against opposing running backs, allowing an average of nearly 24 points to the position in standard scoring leagues. I don't think Murray will get all of that. Matthews will get some as well. Darren Sproles is kind of the odd man out here, so I'll leave him on the bench. Receiver Jordan Matthews, a B+. The Dolphins very consistent in regards to how opposing wide receivers fare against their secondary. Their average of 257 yards per game given up is about what everybody gets week to week, and I love Matthews' chances of getting the biggest slice of that pie on Sunday. Miles Austin is a C-. Desperation flex play only. He could see more targets, though, with Riley Cooper and Nelson Aguilar both banged up and doubtful for this week. Tight end Zach Ertz is a B-. He'll certainly get some looks from Bradford, but I don't expect big things out of him in this game.
Browns Steelers, Manziel McCown. It definitely makes a difference here, so pay attention on this one. Manziel goes C-. McCown goes B+. You never know how this is going to shake out, so just watch the timeline go, especially on Friday. That's going to be the big tip of the hat. McCown has the rapport with the team and the receivers that can guide them to a possible win, so if there's even a chance he could go, he's going to go. One thing is for sure, if Manziel goes, drop everyone. Running backs, they've been terrible here. The Crows getting a C-. But if you look at Duke Johnson, on the other hand, I'm going to give him a B, and let me tell you why. Running back Duke Johnson is the Browns' number 3 receiver, 12.5% of the targets, and he has 10.5 yards per catch, so something you're going to watch there for sure. Wide receiver Travis Benjamin, the leading receiver for the Browns, B. Nothing special, nothing terrible, and has a decent matchup against the Steelers' defense that's subpar at best. Andrew Hawkins, C+. He has the potential to make some big gains with attention rolling to Benjamin and also tight end Gary Barnidge. A for Gary, he's a stud. He did have one down week, but that's okay. We'll give him a pass. He is just almost nearly matchup proof, and the way Pittsburgh defense has been playing, he should have a good game here. Remember, if Manziel goes, grade or a grade and a half drop on everybody. Over to the Steelers, quarterback Landry Jones. He gets another start as Big Ben can't stay healthy. Good news is it's not Michael Vick, and Jones is serviceable. B- for Jones. I don't expect him to have a huge day here and really throw the ball a ton, obviously because they're playing the Browns. So he's going to get a decent grade here. I think he has some decent rapport with Antonio Brown, so that'll help. Hell, he might get 284 yards again. Running back D'Angelo Williams, he's going to get the A here. Big work time for him. He's going to get it. He's proven he can get his. Watch out, monster game. They're going to rely on Williams to carry the load and control the clock, so plenty of touches coming his way, especially with his 5.3 yards per carry on 90 touches. Wide receiver Antonio Brown, he's surely not going to have the day he did, but he could see 100. The last time Landry Jones was the starting quarterback for him, he did have 124 yards. So it's not Vic. You have a chance. Go ahead and start Brown as normal. B+ for Antonio Brown. Wide receiver Martavis Bryant, he's going to get some work in as well, as the Browns secondary isn't what it used to be. But again, you have to subtract a little bit of grade off of it because they're going to look to the ground. So B minus. Tight end Heath Miller down to a C. No Big Ben, so his looks definitely go down.
Interesting. Jacksonville, Baltimore is my next matchup. On the Jags side, Blake Bortles, he's an A. Only the Saints allow more fantasy production to the quarterback position than Baltimore does. This is an excellent matchup for Bortles, whether Allen Hurns plays or not. TJ Yeldon is your running back, B minus for him. The Ravens aren't nearly as terrible against the run as they are the pass, so Yeldon's grade is pretty average here. They only allow 3.8 yards per carry, less than 100 yards per game, and have given up only 5 rushing scores on the season. The receivers, Allen Robinson, give him an A here. No team gives up more fantasy production to pass catchers than Baltimore does. They're dead last in the league, allowing over 300 yards per game through the air and a total of 16 touchdowns to pass catchers. Boy, I'm crossing my fingers as an Allen Hurns owner that he plays this week. Gave him an A if he does play. If he doesn't play, that's very unfortunate. I think Marquise Lee might be worth a flyer. If you have some room and are looking to stash a wide receiver, if he gets the nod this week, this is such a great matchup. I mean, you could literally play anybody at wide receiver in Jacksonville and probably get some decent fantasy production out of them. Tight end Julius Thomas, he's a C+. The Ravens may be the league's worst against opposing wide receivers, but they've actually done a really nice job of keeping opposing tight ends out of the end zone and largely off the score sheet. Not that Thomas has done a whole lot of that anyway. On the Ravens side, Joe Flacco is a B grade. The Jacksonville pass defense ranks 28th against opposing quarterbacks. They allow 23 fantasy points per game to the position and have given up 14 passing touchdowns on the air. That's a little less than 2 per game on average, so Flacco's a decent start. Justin Forsett, I give an A2. Despite the Jags ranking 4th in the league in total yards versus opposing backs, they've surrendered 8 rushing touchdowns and can't seem to stop pass-catching backs, leading to an average of nearly 21 fantasy points per game to the position, which benefits a guy like Justin Forsett. The receiver, Kamar Aiken, is a B+. Jacksonville isn't as awful as the Ravens are against opposing wide receivers, but they're not far off, giving up over 280 yards per game to pass catchers and a total of 14 touchdowns on the season. Chris Givens is a B-. He looks to be Flacco's second wide receiver option behind Aiken. He should see plenty of targets in a game that could be a shootout, believe it or not. So Chris Givens, a name to remember. Crockett Gilmore is the tight end. I give him a C. Dennis Pitta, now officially done for the season, leaving the tight end position to Gilmore, who actually loses touches to fullback Kyle Juszczyk, who I can't pronounce his name, in the passing game. It's all terrible. I wouldn't start Gilmore. In fact, I wouldn't even have him on my roster. Don't bother.
I heard that. Vikings Raiders here. This could be Teddy's game. He is cleared for the practice here. He should be out there. He should be good to go. So I'm going to go out on a limb, a reasonable one. Teddy B gets a B+. He can move. He should be able to pass okay on Oakland's 31st worst pass defense. Teddy doesn't have impressive stats, but bad defenses make other teams look great. Your NFL leading rusher, Adrian Peterson, he gets an A. He will have great yardage for this game for obvious reasons, 4.5 yards per attempt, and he may even get one of those elusive touchdowns he's been looking around for. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, B+. He is quickly showing everyone that he can make big catches and big plays. Let's hope he stays that way and stays focused on the game. He is averaging fewer targets than his other wide receivers, but has nearly double the yardage and has 11 catches over 20 yards. That's pretty awesome. Wide receiver Mike Wallace, who does have the highest target percentage, is also the biggest receiving disappointment, not named Cordero Patterson. C+ for Mike Wallace. It's hard to give him a good grade as he's been bad and is not making those big plays. It's just not there. And we were all shocked that Pittsburgh let him go. Tight end Kyle Rudolph is a C- at best. It's a run-first option, and he is low on the pecking order. Over to the Raiders, quarterback Derek Carr. He's going to get a tough challenge against Minnesota. Their defense looking awesome. Carr's going to get a B out of me here. While he has the tools, Crabtree, all those awesome guys that were underneath the radar that we called, he has the potential. He has 19 touchdowns on 4 interceptions. His safety net running back is not there this week. Running back Latavius Murray, he's in that concussion protocol, but he has not been cleared, so keep a close eye on that one. I don't think it's going to go. Taiwan Jones, he's going to be filling in if he doesn't. 14 rushes, and he's averaging 5 yards per carry. Doesn't mean much, but I wouldn't start either of them. I would start Murray if he goes, but I definitely wouldn't start Taiwan Jones against that Minnesota defense. Wide receiver Amari Cooper, he's going to get his action. B for Cooper and Crabtree, B for him. The thing here is Derek Carr, who throws to Crabtree more than Cooper. If you look at the stats, Carr is throwing more to Crabtree than Cooper. Barely, but it's still there, which makes Crabtree so valuable and is likely picked up in the last week or two, but go out, check your waiver wire, make sure. Maybe somebody dropped him with the bye week shuffles. There is no tight end value on the Raiders roster as they left all the playmakers, and it's all about the flash.
Tell you what, if I'm in a dynasty league, and I'm in lots of them, I'm giving up a lot to get Derek Carr on my roster for multiple years. That guy is going to be an absolute stud if he's not already there. We move on to New England and the New York Giants. Begin on the Patriots side. Tom Brady is an A. This is the same Giants defense that gave up 7 passing touchdowns to Drew Brees a couple of weeks ago. You think Brady wouldn't mind surpassing that mark? I don't know if he will, but that'd be pretty sweet as a Brady owner. LeGarrette Blount is a B+. He should see the vast majority of the backfield work, especially if the Patriots get up early. He'll get a lot of work. The Giants give up nearly 115 yards per game on the ground and have allowed 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. James White, Brandon Bolden, leaving them both on the bench. Got to see what the splits are going to be before endorsing starting either one of these two guys. The way I'm seeing it right now, James White would probably be the more valuable of the two. Brandon Bolden is really nothing more than a special team superstar, and he's built more like a LeGarrette Blount type of runner, whereas James White is more of like the Deion Lewis slasher/pass catching guy. So I guess if I had to choose one, James White would be the guy, but I'm not starting either this week. Receivers, Julian Edelman's an obvious A. He's as can't miss as wide receiver can be in this league, and this is as can't miss a matchup as there is. Brandon LaFell is a B. He led the team in targets, receptions, and yards last week. He has yet to reach that end zone, but we may not be saying that after this one. Danny Amendola is a C. Even he's an option in this game. Basically play all the Patriots you normally would play, and yes, that includes, of course, Rob Gronkowski, an obvious A. He'll bounce back nicely from last week's mediocrity. Over to the Giants. Eli Manning is a B in this matchup. This is a decent but not great matchup for Eli in the Giants passing game. But because their running game is all sorts of terrible, there should be a lot of throwing here. My only concern with Eli, of course, are turnovers. Otherwise, lots of attempts, yards, and likely multiple touchdowns in a game like this. Those runners, man, I'm leaving them all on the bench this week. Rashad Jennings, Orleans Darkwa. The Patriots are very quietly second in the league in yards given up to opposing runners, allowing only an average of about 89 yards per game on the ground. They've also only allowed 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. No Giants worth starting this week. The receivers, though, Odell Beckham, he's an A. Can't bench him. He's Eli's guy. Ruben Randall, a B, should also be uber involved this week as the Giants figure to be playing catch-up quite a bit. And Larry Donnell, still not 100% he'll play this week. I'm not sure I'd put him into my lineup, regardless if he does play.
I agree. I wouldn't have him or any of those running backs. And for that matter, when I picked up Wes Welker, I dropped Jennings from my roster. So
there you
not
go.
Even worth it anymore. All right, Chiefs-Broncos. The Chiefs look to get beat up in Mile High Stadium. Quarterback Alex Smith, D for don't. Very simple. If the Broncos can hold Rodgers to 76 yards, Smith could have 50. Running back Charkandrick West will be used, but he will likely be ineffective. This is just going to be a bad game to own any Chief right now. I'm giving West a B-. He may catch a pass or two. He's showing that he can, and he does have the flash to break one. So if you have to start a running back, go with Charkandrick West. Wide receiver Jeremy Maclin, he's going to get a B- as well. That's about it for any wide receiver on the Chiefs roster. It's just you're playing in Denver. They just came off that huge loss. even with Aqib Talib out, it's still Alex Smith, so I don't think they're going to miss him this week. Great game to be suspended. Tight end Travis Kelce, with his 19.6% of the targets, he could get some action on the quick dumps as Smith is running for his life. Short and sweet of Kansas City Chiefs here. Quarterback Peyton Manning suffering a very tough loss in Lucas Oil Stadium. Look for him to get just wicked on the Chiefs here. I'm going to give Peyton a B+. I have a good feeling that he's going to pick apart the secondary and let his believers believe that he can still do this. Running back C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman are within 70 yards of each other for total. It's back and forth, but Hillman is my favorite regardless of the depth chart. He has 3 more touchdowns than Anderson does and gets in the groove much faster. So B- for Anderson, B for Hillman. I expect them both to see significant time in the second half here, so you really can't lean one way or another. They're both going to get their yards. Wide receiver Demaryius Thomas and wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders, B+ and B respectively. These two make up 57% of the targets on each team and over half of Peyton Manning's touchdowns. Tight end Owen Daniels, B-. While he averages 10 yards per catch, there won't be much action in his directions as the Broncos are going to make a statement win and then hit the running game pretty hard on Sunday afternoon.
Unknowingly, Brian, you actually gave me a great idea for a fantasy football team name for next year.
Uh-oh.
Next year, I will have at least one team with the name The Quick Dumps.
The quick dumps, yeah. Well, I actually held back a pretty good giggle there. I was just kind of reading it through it as quick as I can because quick dumps popped in, and I just had to keep on going.
Brian and I, if anybody ever wondered how old we are, we're obviously 5. Duh.
Yeah. I'm 6.5, so.
There you go. All right. Sunday night football and a good old-fashioned slobber knocker in the Pacific Northwest. Arizona at Seattle. We begin on the Cardinals side. Carson Palmer is a C in this matchup. The Seahawks rank second in yards allowed through the air, just behind Denver. They've allowed the least amount of passing touchdowns in the league, only 6, and they've been downright nasty in their last 2 games before the Week 9 bye. I'm sorry, I'm still laughing about the quick
dumps.
I gotta get it together. Be professional already. Jeez. They've held Matt Castle to under 100 yards total in Week 8, Colin Kaepernick to just 124 yards passing in Week 7. Granted, Palmer is worlds better than those guys. I mean, you could call them the quick dumps, but this is a much more...
We're off
Gotta
the
have
rails.
fun once in a while, don't you? Gotta have fun in this job. This is a much more difficult matchup than anything Palmer has seen this year. All right. I obviously need sleep, Brian. You know what I'm saying? On to the running backs. Chris Johnson's a C. The Seahawks are an opposing running back's worst nightmare. They're allowing only about 11 fantasy points per game to the position in standard leagues. Temper your expectations on Johnson and his rookie counterpart, no relation, David. I'm also leaving Andre Ellington on the bench this week due to the tough matchup. The receivers, though, there should be some to go around here. Larry Fitzgerald, I give a B to. He's been so fantastic this season, but he faces perhaps his toughest matchup of the year on Sunday night. Michael Floyd is a B-. He's also looked great as of late, scoring touchdowns in his past 3 games. John Brown is a C+. Deep threat. He'll need to get behind Seattle's secondary in order to hit pay dirt. That's a tough task, especially with the game being in Seattle. No tight end, I should say, to speak of for the Cards. But onto the Seahawks, Russell Wilson is a C+. Arizona can be every bit as nasty as Seattle when it shows up. They've allowed the 7th fewest yards through the air, 13 touchdown passes, but they've also picked off 13 opponent throws as well this season. Wilson may be asked to get something done with his feet in this game, but not a ton with his arm. Beast mode gets a B this week. Teams have found a way to get it done against Arizona's 7th-ranked run defense, but it'll take lots of volume to get there. Luckily, Lynch is that kind of workhorse that can eventually wear down a front 7. He'll need to be. The Cards will be loaded for bear, so to speak. Doug Baldwin is your wide receiver of note. He gets a C in this matchup. There may be enough targets to consider him in a flex, but it is a really tough matchup, and the Hawks don't figure to be throwing an awful lot. Jimmy Graham, I'll give a B minus too. This may be the rare occurrence where he leads the team in targets, receptions, and yards. And that doesn't happen that often these days.
No, it does not. All right, let's do a Monday night Texans-Bengals. Texans are back. They got that good rest. They're going to get back on track here. Quarterback Brian Hoyer, he's my long shot pick of the season. I'm giving him a strong B+ here. I want to give him that A, but a strong B+, as the Bengals defense is average on both passing and rushing defense. So he's going to have his wide receivers good and healthy here. So a good day for Hoyer. He's been my boy. He's going to be that top 10 quarterback I wanted. Running back Alfred Blue, he is the supposed starter, but I'm not getting involved in this disaster. As if you've been a listener since the very beginning, I was trying to bank on those Houston running backs not named Arian Foster, and it was not working out. I wouldn't start a Texans running back for another week or two yet. Let's see how it shakes out, see if anybody's learned their lesson. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, 31% of the targets. He gets an A. He has proven mainly matchup proof with the exception of one game this year, so he's going to bounce back, have a good day here. Mainly because the running game is terrible, and there will be two receivers that command attention. Speaking of, wide receiver Nate Washington, B. He has been a great compliment and will shine with other teams' focus on Hopkins. But, here's the big but to this, Cecil Shorts. He is actually now listed number 2 on the depth chart. They are expecting Shorts to edge out Washington, but I'm going to play the history card here. Nate Washington has proven time and time again that he is a number 2 wide receiver. So while Cecil Shorts III may try and weasel his way in there, I don't think it's going to work out. He's got a good rapport with Hoyer. So, the Nate Washington, DeAndre Hopkins reminds me of the Calvin Johnson Golden Tate pairing last year, where Tate was just as good as Calvin Johnson last year because they complemented each other. When one went out with injury, the other one stepped up. So I think that's going to happen again. The tight ends, they don't get much play in this system. Quarterback Andy Dalton, on the Bengals side of the ball, he gets the 8th best pass defense on Monday night. Statistically, not his best time slot. He typically does pretty bad, but last week had a pretty good game on Sunday night. The only bad game from Dalton was against the Steelers it wasn't really bad. It was just a tough divisional game. I'm giving Dalton the A start here. He's had some great rest, and with an easy last week, they're going to need to protect their undefeated season in what could be a shootout here. Running back Giovanni Bernard, clearly the better runner and pass catcher, but it's still not getting the goal line work, which is where Jeremy Hill comes in. Gio gets a B+, and Jeremy Hill gets a C+ here. It comes down to workload and capability, especially with Hill just a fumble away from getting yanked. It's all about consistency. Wide receiver A.J. Green should have extra pressure, and I'm expecting him to have less than a stellar game, but also get more yards. B for AJ. Look for Marvin Jones and Sanu to get plenty of action when the defenses play AJ tough. Dalton has the smarts to throw elsewhere and will without hesitation. Jones B+, Sanu B-. Someone who will be getting a receiving touchdown. If I had to bet on one player ever getting a touchdown, it'd be Tyler Eifert. The guy is just an absolute magnet that Gronk is. If it's a passing play inside the 10, my money is on Eifert, as he has 9 touchdowns this far. And I made it through without laughing because quick dumps is still on my mind.
Dude, I cannot get it out of my mind, and I feel bad because it's like, you're supposed to be kind of professional when you're doing this thing. But the truth of the matter is, and I've been doing radio, as you know, for like 20 years now. So, this never happens when you're in your space. And when I do this show, I'm not really in my space. I'm kind of just, this is my passion. This is what I love. I love fantasy football. I love everything about it. So I'm just here having fun, and I'm not trying to be like all professional and stuff, although I'm trying to give out the best information I can. So a lot of that's just research. But when something like the quick dumps happens, I can't stop laughing. And hopefully that was as infectious on your end of listening, wherever you're finding us, iTunes, Stitcher, the Libsyn website, or on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. I'm sure they're thrilled to have our brand of radio on their airwaves today. But truth of the matter is, sometimes you just got to sit back and laugh, don't you?
Absolutely. Always a great time, man. Always a great time. We got one more segment coming up, don't we?
Yeah, we've made it through all the matchups though so far. And again, it's what's really great about subscribing to us on iTunes, Brian, is the fact that you can go back in case you want to revisit before you really set that lineup on Sunday.
Yeah, that's actually pretty important. Once you listen to us on 1350, and you go, oh wait, what did they say? Man, what did they say about this matchup or that matchup? iTunes and Stitcher, that's where it's at. You can come back. You set us up to download. We're going to download automatically to your phone every morning when it posts, and you can come back to us at any time.
Yeah, and we love your feedback too. So whether you love us, hate us, or whatever, we want to hear it from you. Making this show better is job number one week to week. All right, let's wrap up with our bargain bin. 3 positional players, many of whom you can find on your waiver wire. Plug right in and expect some decent amount of fantasy production from. Usually we go quarterback, running back, and a pass catcher of some sort. Who's your quarterback this week, Brian?
Well, the one and only Kirk Cousins. It was really tough for me to put him in this position, but his receivers are back at full strength. The matchups are in his favor. Everything is aligning for Cousins to have his second game with more than 1 touchdown. I think he's going to put up some above average statistics. So if you are someone who may have just found out your quarterback's out 2 to 6 weeks, or if you're one of them Big Ben owners, take a look at Kirk Cousins.
Mine is Landry Jones, Pittsburgh. The Browns are 26th in the league against opposing quarterbacks, and though it's conceivable the Steelers ground and pound in this matchup, I believe Jones will get you a solid 250 and 2 stat line by the final gun. That's my, I guess, not really bold prediction, but that's my prediction. Who's your running back this week?
Well, this is someone who I was never high on in the opening weeks and even through midseason, but he's growing on me now. Duke Johnson. He is a pass-catching machine. They got rid of Turbin. You heard the stats. He's the number 3 receiver. He always has one of them big 50-yard touchdown passes from the running back position. And he's going to be one of them PPR guys that'll sneak underneath the radar. So check out Duke Johnson.
My pick for this week in the bargain bin is Antonio Andrews of Tennessee. Carolina ranks 24th against opposing running backs, giving up an average of nearly 20 points to the position per game in standard scoring leagues. There really isn't any competition for touches, and rookie quarterback Marcus Mariota, of course, keeps defenses honest with his passing prowess. Check out Antonio Andrews if you need somebody. Who's your pass catcher?
Wide receiver Mohamed Sanu. I expect him to get that action, and if you're in need of a flex here, with all the other injuries, use him wisely, friends. He's averaging 14 yards per catch. And like I said in just the breakdown, they're going to roll that extra pressure towards A.J. Green. Sanu is under the radar. Good play.
There you go. My receiver is Robert Woods, Buffalo Bills. Facing a Jets defense without Antonio Cromartie, Woods will likely be the benefactor of being the Bills' best wide receiver, not stranded on Revis Island. Therefore, I like his chances, and I talked pretty extensively about why I liked Robert Woods, and for that matter, any non-number 1 wide receiver against the Jets going forward. It's been another fun one, Brian. Our friends can find us at any time on Facebook. The conversation continues there. Facebook is 515 Fantasy Football. Twitter at 515 Fantasy. And you can also email us if you'd rather, 515fantasy@gmail.com. Anything to add, Brian?
This has just been an absolutely fun ride. We talked about it. This is what we do. This is what we love. I absolutely love the interaction. I love hearing from people out there in cyberspace who reach us via Twitter, through the mailbox, and say, hey, great job. You made these calls during your matchup. I won because of you. I won because of what you said. That makes me feel awesome, so especially when I look at my own team and I'm not doing so hot, I at least get the win knowing that I helped somebody else win.
Yeah, it's really cool to get that feedback. Any number of ways, even just somebody coming up and sharing with me that they've heard me on 1350 ESPN radio, for example, and said, wow, man, that's really cool. I've been listening to you on Laser for years and checking you out fantasy football style. I even had my sister who's apparently seeing somebody now, a new guy, and apparently he's a big fantasy football guy. So she texted me like over the weekend, like, hey, don't you do a fantasy football show there in Des Moines? So, you just never know where you're going to find new friends that tune in and hopefully benefit in some way by listening. But either way, we once again thank you for listening this week. Back again for Week 11. We wish you the best of luck here in Week 10. One last thing, Brian. We are not the Quick Dumps.
We're not the Quick Dumps.
We are 515 Fantasy Football.
That's right.
For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall. Thanks for listening to 515 Fantasy Football.